Hello everybody, how are you guys doing? Hope everybody is doing amazingly well. Welcome back to another lesson of English with Ashish. And guys, today in this lesson, we are going to learn, we are going to master everything about the indirect object. We'll learn what an indirect object is. We'll learn what can function as an indirect object. We'll learn how to identify an indirect object. We'll learn what are the verbs with which we use an indirect object. We'll learn how it's different from a direct object. In short, we'll learn everything about it. So I'm excited. I know you guys are too. Let's do it. Let's start with understanding what exactly an indirect object is. So guys, an indirect object is a person that receives the direct object. An indirect object is somebody or something. It is generally a person, somebody that receives the direct objects, right? It can also be a thing that receives the direct object. When it's a thing, it will function as an entity. It will function as a person, but it's generally a person, a noun or a pronoun. All right. Now, it's very important to note that you cannot have indirect objects in a sentence without having a direct object. If you do not have a direct object in a sentence, you simply cannot have an indirect object. Why? Because the direct object is what the indirect object receives. So if you do not have the direct object, what is your indirect object going to receive? Nothing, right? So you simply cannot have an indirect object in a sentence if the sentence does not have a direct object. Now, let me show you some examples and make you understand how indirect objects work. Example number one. I gave John my bike last night. I gave what? My bike. I gave what? My bike. Who received the bike? Who received it? It's John, right? So John is our indirect object because it is the person that receives the direct object, which is my bike, right? I gave what? My bike. Who received it? John. I gave it to whom? John. John is our indirect object that receives our direct object, which is our bike. My bike. Second example. Max has brought us Chinese food. Max has brought what? That is our Chinese food. This is our direct object. Let's just call it DO. And Max has brought it for whom? For whom? This is our indirect object ID. Us. Max has brought Chinese food for whom? For us. So us is the indirect object that receives the direct object, which is Chinese food. Got this? Third example. I won't tell anyone your secrets. I won't tell what? Tell your secrets. Tell what? Your secrets. This is your direct object, DO, right? You won't tell it to whom? To anyone. This is your indirect object. This is your indirect object, IO. I won't tell what? Your secrets to anyone. All right. So this is what an indirect object is. It is a person that receives the direct object. We've just seen that. Now, how to identify an indirect object in a sentence? That's a very valid question. You should know it. It's very, very simple, guys. All you have to do is you have to ask the question to whom or for whom to the main verb, and the answer to the question will be your indirect object. If there is an answer, right? Now let's take some examples and try to find out the indirect object. Example number one. Mike taught us how to play chess. Mike taught. You teach something. What is that? What is the direct object? How to play chess. Taught what? This is what Mike taught. To whom? Who received this teaching? Us. Indirect object. Mike taught us how to play chess. Second, could you give my friend your car for a week? Could you give what? Your car. This is your direct object. The moment you ask the question, what is the verb, you're going to get your direct object. If it's a thing, if it's a person, the question will be whom. Could you give what? Your car. To whom? My friend. My friend is going to receive it. Could you give my friend your car for a week? Who's going to receive your car? That's my friend. Indirect object. Alan cooked us Chinese food. Alan cooked. You're going to cook something. You cannot cook a person. So the object of the verb cook is going to be a thing, which is Chinese food here. Cooked what? Chinese food. Alan cooked Chinese food for whom? For us. That is our indirect object. Last, I will book you the tickets. I will book. You will book what? You're going to book something? What is that? The tickets. Book it for whom? For you. I will book you the tickets. I will book the tickets for you. So you is the indirect object here. So this is how we identify an indirect object in a sentence, by asking to whom or for whom. The moment you ask this question, you're going to get your indirect object. That is going to be a person. It can also be a thing as well. When it's a thing, the thing is going to function as a person. I'll show you some examples going forward. So this is how we identify an indirect object. Now it's very important to note that not all verbs can take indirect objects. Only a few verbs can take indirect objects. And these verbs are called ditransitive verbs. Ditransitive verbs are verbs that take two objects, direct object and the indirect object, right? We have a detailed video on this topic on our channel, right? Make sure you go through the video after this video. And we have a detailed post on the topic on our website as well, right? You can see the post on your screen, right? This is the post I'm talking about. The link to the post will be provided in the description. So here on the screen are the most common ditransitive verbs we have in the English language. Sell, buy, tell, give, pass, bring, sing, hand, lend, send, teach, read, get. These are the most common ditransitive verbs we have in the English language, right? All these verbs will take two objects, direct and indirect, right? And other verbs, linking verbs, intransitive verbs will not take two objects, will not have indirect objects in them, all right? Sometimes we change the position of our indirect object and we make it a part of a prepositional phrase. Yes, sometimes an indirect object can be rephrased into a prepositional phrase by changing its position. When it is done, the prepositional phrase either starts with the preposition to or the preposition for. Let me show you how it is done. So we have two structures. Structure number one, where we have the subject followed by the verb, followed by the indirect object, followed by the direct object. Now, we can rephrase this structure and we can place the direct object first and then the indirect object. If the direct object comes first, then we will have to use a preposition before the indirect object, and this entire thing becomes a prepositional phrase. So we have the subject, then we have the verb, then we have the direct object before the indirect object, and then we have either to or for, then the indirect object. And this is very important to note that if you follow this structure, the indirect object, this here will not be an indirect object. Originally it's an indirect object, but in this structure it will be called the object of the preposition. It will be called the object of the preposition, right? Object of this preposition, right? Let me show you some examples and make you understand. No worry, it's very easy. Example number one, I will give you my phone. The first structure, I helping verb, main verb, give what? My phone, right? To whom? You. I will give you. So first we have the indirect object and then we have the direct object, right? I will give you my phone. I can rephrase the structure, right? I can say I will give my phone. I will give my phone. This is the direct object. Then we have this preposition to, and then we have the indirect object you. I will give my phone to you. I can't say I will give my phone you. I can't say that. No, big no, you can't do that, right? You can't use an indirect object right after a direct object without using a preposition before the indirect object. You cannot do that. So we've got to use a preposition before it. If we place the direct object before the indirect object, which we've done here, I will give you my phone. I will give my phone to you. So here, let me show you this. So here, to you is a prepositional phrase where to is a preposition, to is a preposition, and you is the object of the preposition. But originally, see, originally it's an indirect object. You see that, right? Second example, my father bought me a bike. My father, subject, bought, verb, me, indirect object, a bike, direct object, right? So this is the first structure, the normal structure. My father bought me a bike. So we have the indirect object first, then the direct object. There is no preposition. If I change the structure, right? If I rephrase the structure, change the positions, I'm going to use a preposition. My father bought a bike. My father bought a bike for me, for me. So here for me is a prepositional phrase, right? Now it's important to know that some verbs take the preposition to and some verbs take the preposition for. What are these verbs? Let's find out. Structure number one. First the subject, then the verb, then the direct object, and then the preposition to followed by its object, which is originally the indirect object. And these are the verbs that are going to take this structure, that can take this structure. Pass, give, read, sell, offer, write, send, show, sing, teach, or introduce. Let me show you some examples. I can't sell my property to you. I can't sell what? My property to you, right? Direct object, then the preposition to, and followed by the object of the preposition, which is you. But you here, it's originally the indirect object. I can write it as I can't, I can't sell you, I can't sell you my property. So in this sentence, you is the indirect object, but here you is the object of the preposition as it's coming right after the preposition. So what comes after a preposition is the object of the preposition. All right. Second, they offered a job to me. They offered what? A job, direct object, to me, right? Offered a job for me, I can't say that. Sell my property for you, I can't say that. The meaning is going to change, right? So these verbs are going to take the preposition to if you use the second structure, right? Direct object, then the indirect object. Now, these are the verbs get, buy, bring, and purchase that are going to take the preposition for if you place the direct object before the indirect object. Subject, verb, indirect object, then the preposition for, and then the object of the preposition for, which is originally the indirect object. We know that, right? Examples. She got some gifts for the kids. She got what? Got some gifts. Gifts for the kids, right? Indirect object. I will buy something. I will buy something for you. I can't say to you. If I say to you, that is going to be incorrect. I can't say she got some gifts to the kids. Again, incorrect. These verbs will use the preposition for. All right. Now, the question is, what can be an indirect object? An indirect object can be a word, one word, or a phrase, a group of words. Word. When it's a word, it's going to be a noun or a pronoun. Examples. Let's get them some food. Let's get what? Some food, direct object. Who receives it? Them. Indirect object, right? So them is a word here, right? Personal pronoun, objective case. If an object is a personal pronoun, any object, direct object, indirect object, object of a preposition, object of a possessive adjective, whatever, any object, if it's a personal pronoun, it has to be an objective case. I can't say let's get they some food. I can't say that. Let's get he some food. Let's get she some food. Incorrect. I can't say that. If it's a personal pronoun, it has to be an objective case. Let's get them some food. Let's get him some food, her some food. All right. Second, did you give Aman my number? Did you give what? My number to whom? Aman. Aman is a noun, one word. So it can be a word, right? If it's a word, it will be a noun or a pronoun. All right. It can be a phrase as well. It can also be a phrase. For example, they gifted my parents a house. They gifted what? A house. Who received it? My parents. Indirect object. My parents, which is a noun phrase. My plus parents. Possessive adjective, determiner plus a noun, which is parents. Noun phrase. I gave your paper to the man that came to see me yesterday with you. I gave what? Your paper. This is what I gave. Direct object. To, which is the preposition. Now the indirect object. To whom? The man that came to see me yesterday with you. No, note this thing. If your indirect object is a long phrase, if it's a long phrase, make sure you use it after the direct object. because if you use it before the direct object, it might confuse your listener or reader. So if I say, I gave the man that came to see me yesterday with you your paper, sounds little strange, and you might have difficulty finding the direct and the indirect object. So note this: if the indirect object, if the person is a long phrase, then place the direct object first and then the indirect object after a preposition, right? I gave your paper to the man that came to see me yesterday with you. Third, I have bought a beautiful ring. I have bought what? A beautiful ring. This is what I bought. For, this is the person that receives this direct object. The girl I have been dating for years. This is the person that receives the direct object. It's a phrase. The girl I have been dating for years. This is the simple noun, pre-modifier, and this is a post-modifier. I have been dating for years. If I say I have bought the girl I have been dating for years a beautiful ring, technically, grammatically, absolutely correct, but it doesn't sound nice because it might confuse your listener or reader, right? So it can also be a phrase. Now, as I said earlier, an indirect object can also be a thing. When it's a thing, it's going to function as an entity. For example, I gave your school a lot of money. I gave what? A lot of money to whom? Your school. So school is working as a person because it's receiving something. A thing cannot receive, right? So the school is functioning as an entity, right? I gave your school a lot of money. Your school, indirect object. They sent my company a notice. They sent what? A notice. To whom? My company. So again, my company is the indirect object that is functioning as an entity. So, as I said earlier, an indirect object can also be a thing. Now, the question is, what is the difference between a direct object and an indirect object? By now, you must have figured it out. I have already published a lesson on direct objects. The last lesson, you can watch it and completely master direct object. But here, let's talk about it. So, a direct object is something or somebody that directly receives the action, right? It can be a person or a thing that directly receives an action. How do you find it out? By asking what or whom to the verb. If you ask what or whom to the verb, you're going to get your direct object. How do you find indirect object? By asking to whom or for whom, right? This is the difference, right? And you can have a direct object without having an indirect object, but you cannot say the same for the indirect object. For an indirect object, you must have a direct object. Some examples: we love Ashish. We love whom? Ashish. Direct object. Answers the question whom. You can't break this wall. You can't break what? This wall. Answers the question what. These are direct objects, and we do not have an indirect object in the sentence, right? As I said, you can have a direct object without having an indirect object. The same cannot be said about the indirect object. Examples: they brought me a gift. They brought what? A gift. To whom? Me. We have the direct object. See, read us the story. Read what? Read what? The story. Direct object. To whom? To us. Indirect object. So in both these examples, the last examples, we have the direct object, a gift, the story, right? So this is the difference between a direct object and an indirect object. Hope you enjoyed the lesson. Hope you learned something new. If you did, like the video, share it with others. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe to the channel, become a part of the family, and press that notification button as well, so that every single time I come up with a lesson, you get notified and you get to watch it right away. And I have a task for you. On your screen are some sentences. All you have to do is you have to find out the direct objects, and these sentences, these questions will be provided, are there on my website post with answers. So do try this and match your answers with mine on the post, on the website post. The link is in the description, right? So hope you had fun, because I had fun. And if you have any question, any doubt, any query, do let me know in the comment section below, and I'll see you guys very soon. Till then, keep learning, have fun. I'm out, namaskar.